Welcome to the Stepmom Side with Alicia Crasco, the podcast for stepmoms ready to create the life they want and one they actually have a say in. Here we talk all things stepmom life and just a little bit more. Leave the superficial conversations at the door and get ready for perspective shifts and actionable advice to help you on your way to creating the life you want, one step at a time. Hey there, welcome back to the Stepmom Side podcast. I'm so glad you're here. I'm your host, Alicia, and whether you're folding laundry, driving to pick up or drop off, out running errands, or just taking a moment for yourself, this episode is for you. Today we're going to dive into something that might make you squirm a little bit, but I promise it's coming from love and honesty and me just wanting to be there for you. But here's what the topic is. What to do when your husband's past still haunts your present. Yep, we're talking retroactive jealousy, lingering ex dynamics, and how that emotional residue can affect your blended family in ways you didn't expect. This is one of those like, oh, I didn't sign up for this when I became a stepmom, or had I known, maybe I would have thought twice. So this episode was inspired by some DMs that I got and coaching conversations that I'm having, where stepmoms just shared their struggle with feeling like they're constantly bumping into their partner's past, whether it's through photos that pop up, even like on their little like picture frames, like those digital picture frames that happen, social media, stories, like the holidays are here and stories come up like, hey, remember when? And you're like, yeah, I wasn't there, right? So photos, stories, social media, or even the kids bringing up the before you times. And a lot of times, we make that mean something that it doesn't, and we'll get into that later in this episode. But today we're going to unpack that together. Like, I'll share what it really means when this happens, how to process those feelings without shame, and most importantly, how to move forward with clarity and confidence. Because honestly, like, that's why you're here. You want the clarity, you want the confidence, you want to know like, okay, this happened, now what the hell do I do, right? So let's start by naming what this even is. When I say your husband or your partner's past haunts your present, what does that look like to you? Like, what does that actually mean? It could be the throw pillow she picked out that's still on your couch, the vacation destination they used to go to that you now feel weird visiting. That is 100% me. The photo album the kids pull out when they miss how things used to be. It could be the dishes. It could be the house that you live in. It could be, the stories, whatever. So I just want to get a few things straight first. This isn't about being petty or insecure. Like, let's just make that clear right now. This is not about being petty or insecure. It's about the emotional friction of entering into a story that started before you, and not knowing what to do with the pieces that are still just like hanging around. So here's the problem. Here's the dilemma. You are coming in the middle of the story, and every other character in this story has years, decades of history, and you don't. And then all of a sudden you're new and you're like trying to catch up, right? So for a lot of stepmoms, this hits hard. This hits hard because we're wired to compare. Not just as stepmoms, but like women in general. And when you already feel like the outsider in your own home, any reminder of what came before or life pre-you can stir up some serious emotions. And so, again, this isn't about being petty or about being insecure. Like, this is what it is. Like, let's name the struggle. Like, you got to name it to tame it kind of thing. So how exactly does this show up? Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you asked, because like, let's take notes here. So we already covered naming the struggle, right? If you're like taking notes and following along, like we name the struggle. Like, what does it look like? If I say your partner's past haunts your present, what does that look like? What does that mean to you? And so if you want to follow along and kind of like do this exercise, because that's really what it is, here's what you can do. First, like, name the struggle. What does it look like? Get crystal clear on what that looks like. And it doesn't feel good to do that. It doesn't feel good to go and be like, oh, let's sit here and think and luxuriate, because that's not what we're doing, on all of the things that like really piss me off, right? So name the struggle. So how does this actually show up? How does the past sneak into the present? Maybe it's in your partner telling a story that includes the ex, and they don't even realize how it hits you, because like this is their past. I say this a lot in coaching sessions. your partner has a higher threshold for their past than they do, because that's part of their story. Kind of like if you've got annoying family members in your life, like your threshold for dealing with them is probably higher than your partner's. Same thing here. Maybe it's the way the kids talk about when mom and dad were still married. That, because that sucks, right? Like that super hurts. That super is like really hard to hear. But here's the deal. They're not being like, oh, I wish, mom and dad were still married, in the sense that like they wish that you weren't here. It's just like, I wish that they were still together, because I think innately all kids, want their parents together. Or maybe it's her voice on the answering machine. Have you ever had that? Like if you've got a landline, or like maybe when you guys got together, like my husband and I have been together for, this is so funny. We were just talking about this the other day. One time, like early on, we were dating. I think we'd been dating for like 5 years. No, I think we were dating for like 3 years at this point, or we had been together for 3 years at this point. And I was like, man, we've been together for years. And he looked at me and he was like, I don't think we've been together long enough for you to say that. And I was really hurt. I'm like, are you effing kidding me right now? Like, what? And so, now we've been married for over 10 and a half years. And we've been together for quite a while. And he was like, can you believe it? We can say we've been together for a decade. And I was like, yeah, like we've been married for over a decade, but we've been together for almost a decade and a half. That is crazy. And he was like, yeah. Anyway, when we got together, all that to say, like when we got together, we still had a landline. So if you still have one, like, or when you got together, if you had one, like was her voice on the answering machine and like you had to hear it, like, yikes. Or maybe it's that family member who still calls you by her name, or just like it just comes up out of nowhere. But these tiny echoes, like they build up, and without realizing it, you start feeling irritated, dismissed, maybe even jealous. You feel even more like an outsider. You start to wonder, like, why does this bother me so much? Am I being dramatic? Like, I have this reel that I did, I don't even know, 2 years ago, maybe at this point. That's, it's like, am I the drama? I don't think I'm the drama, but it's a voiceover. And so that's kind of that thing. Like, you get into your head, and everyone else can start to make you feel like you're the crazy person. And because I did this too. Like I was like, I'm pretty confident. It's really hard to shake me or rock me. But then I became a stepmom, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm dying here. Like, what is happening? And then, I was made to feel like I was the psycho. And I'm like, am I the crazy one? I don't think I'm the crazy one. Am I the crazy one? So, no, friend, here's what I want to tell you. You're being human. You're trying to build something in the present while constantly being reminded of the past. And I posted in my stories a few days ago, it said something like, you can't heal from the past while constantly touching it or trying to learn from it. And it's the same thing here. Like, you're trying to build something in the present while constantly being reminded of the past. That's hard for anyone, especially as a stepmom. It's really hard for you to find your role as a stepmom when that ex is still there. I was just talking to a person in real life that I know, and her husband got divorced last year, and we were talking about how their situation is amicable and it's super great, and they get along really well, and they still do joint holidays and blah blah blah, all of the things. And she was like, it's about as good as it could be. And I was like, I'm just going to tell you, as a stepmom and a stepmom coach, that's probably going to change when one or both of you repartner. And she was like, why? And so I was explaining to her my situation, like, it was really hard for me to find my role and like where I fit in this giant dynamic of like in my house, but then also like in the extended family when, my stepkids' mom I felt like she was always around because we have a relatively smooth, amicable situation. And so I'm like, it's really hard. It was really hard for me to figure out like where I fit in when she was constantly there. Like, I didn't want to be too much and like step on her toes or whatever. And she was like, oh yeah, I guess I could see that. Like, I'm going to have to like take a bit of a back seat or just kind of like step back a little bit when, he repartners. And I was like, probably, but I'll be here for you. Like, I'll help you. So like, ask me all the questions. So now let's go a little bit deeper, because usually what we think is bothering us isn't actually like the thing that's bothering us, or isn't actually that core wound. So it's not just the ex-wife. It's not just the couch that she picked. It's the feeling that you'll never quite measure up, or you'll never quite fit in, or you'll never be enough, or you'll, always be walking in her shadow, or, she'll always be lingering around, or whatever it is. Or there's always going to be this past that doesn't include you. Yeah, there is always going to be this past that doesn't include you. That's how we got to be a stepmom, right? And like, that super sucks to hear, but just to like level with you, like, once I could accept like this past is here and it's always going to be here, I could I could do this. So this is about security, about feeling chosen, valued, and respected in your role. When the past shows up too often in the present, it can make you feel like you're in competition, or in a competition that you never signed up for, and one that you fear losing, right? Like, you don't want to be, I've said this to stepmoms too, like, it feels like you are naked on stage and everyone's like laughing at you, and you have no idea like what the show is that you're performing, and like everyone's waiting for you to fail, and you're already failing because you have no idea what's going on, right? So let me just say this clearly. You are not the second choice. You are the next chapter. You are not the second choice. You are the next chapter. The intentional choice. That matters, right? Like, you and I could switch places however you're being treated, like I would be treated too. But you, my friend, and people are like, oh, sloppy seconds. No, I am the next chapter. I am the intentional choice. Everyone learns from their mistakes. Everyone learns from their red flags. Everyone learns from, their past and whatever happened. Your partner too. So you are the next chapter, and it's really hard. Learn from my mistakes. It's really hard for you to build this next chapter, using the book analogy, if you are constantly trying to go back and read like chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3. Actually, you're probably not going to try to read chapter 1 of your partner's past, because that's, like their formative years, like when they're born and like when they're little. But like, let's say chapter 4, 5, and 6, like, what are we doing? Like, we can't move forward in our story if you're constantly trying to go back and like reread this, and you're trying to figure out, what went wrong, or why did this happen, or why did this happen, or why did you have kids with this person, or why did you guys even get married in the first place? We can't do that. You can't keep touching the stove to find out that it's hot, because it's still hot, right? Like, you can't keep going back to read those chapters if you're trying to like keep writing the story, or rewrite the story, or, take the story down a different path. You can't do that if you're always going back and like flipping through the pages and reminiscing over something that pisses you off, or something that really upsets you, something that doesn't make sense to you, something that will never make sense to you. What are we doing? Why are we doing that to ourselves? Please don't do that. I spent a lot of time doing that. Please, please, please learn from my mistakes. Don't go back and read those chapters. I tell stepmoms this too, like in coaching, and the Stepmom Side community on office hours. Knowledge is not power in this situation. Don't go back and try to read those chapters. No, ma'am. So we've covered naming the struggle. We've covered how the past sneaks into the present, and just now what this is really about, right? Like, we want security. We want to feel chosen, valued, respected, loved, like we belong. And now we're going to talk about what you can actually do about it. So what do we do when these feelings come up? Again, great question. I'm so glad you asked. Because ignoring those questions doesn't work. And then when we do ignore them, why doesn't it work? Because we explode over them. And that isn't the answer either. So we can't win for losing, right? Like, just ignore them. Just pretend like everything is fine. This is why fake it until you make it like doesn't work as a stepmom, because you harbor all these like terrible feelings, and then one day the camel's back breaks and you unload and you flip out, and people are like, what the hell is going on? So here's where we start. 1, we're going to name the emotion without judgment. Say it out loud, or just journal it. I feel jealous when he talks about their trip to Mexico. I feel jealous that my partner has a past. I think that's a really great one to use. And it's not because you're petty, but because you're trying to find your place in a story that started without you. Remember, like, you're coming in at chapter 8, 9, 10, and your partner already has all of these other chapters. And a lot of those chapters, many of those chapters may have been with someone else. That's really freaking hard to come in and like now you're the main character and try to like figure out the role, the dynamic, especially if like it was a messy ending and you know how stories go, right? Number 2, ask, is this about then or now? Is this about then or now? And this is really telling because often we're triggered by a past event, but we think or we assume it means something about the present. Is he currently disrespecting your relationship, or is this just an unhealed emotional bruise that's being bumped? Ugh, that one super sucks. Is your partner currently disrespecting your relationship, or is this just an unhealed emotional bruise that's being bumped? Because that one is really freaking hard, right? Like if you have this part that's unhealed, or if you have this part that you're really insecure about, if you have this part that you are really struggling with, again, you're trying to heal something, you're trying to figure out something while you're going through it, the messy middle, that part really sucks and that part's really hard. So we have to learn how to be comfortable being uncomfortable. And just because there's this messy middle part that we're in and we're trying to figure it out doesn't mean that everything's going to like go perfectly, right? Even if you're in coaching with me, that's why I'm there. Not everything is going to go perfectly. I can give you all of the tools. There are still going to be little things that pop up that you're going to be like, I don't like that this is happening. I don't like that, we have to navigate this, or I don't like that I'm feeling a certain kind of way. I know. I get it. I understand. I was there too. Sometimes you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable to grow through what you go through. So if it's an unhealed emotional bruise that's being bumped, we need to give that a little bit of time. How do bruises go away? We have to give them time, right? And they kind of like work themselves out. Sometimes we can, take something or put some arnica on it and like that will help. But we have to work on being comfortable, being uncomfortable at certain times. And that doesn't mean that we're failing, or it doesn't mean that we are terrible. It doesn't mean that we suck. We're just human. Number 3, we need to communicate clearly, not critically. So you might say, hey, I know you didn't mean anything by it, but when you talk about these trips, I feel a little unseen. Can we create some new traditions together? This isn't about erasing the past. It's about creating space for the present. And again, because we're in the thick of like the holiday season, this has come up a lot in stepmom side in like office hours when I'm talking to stepmoms. I'm like, this is so frustrating, like holiday traditions and starting new ones and all of the things. When we were in marriage counseling, I was like, I live in their house. I'm decorating their tree. I'm basically like living their life, but just it's me instead, right? And so, my husband was very much like, I don't want to rock the boat. I don't want things to be weird for the kids, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I'm dying over here. Like, what are we doing? Like, I'm dying over here. And so our marriage counselor was like, you guys can start new traditions. You can incorporate traditions that Alicia has from like her past growing up or things that she's done like as an adult, or you guys start your own new ones. Like maybe you go to shows with the kids. Maybe you go on vacation with the kids instead of getting gifts and like trying to compete with the other house. Or maybe you take a small trip and you do less gifts or whatever it is. Like it's okay for you guys to do things differently. And I think that was a little scary for my husband, but I also like for me, it was very freeing because I was like, oh my gosh, I get it. I feel seen. I feel understood. I feel like I'm not a crazy person, right? So it's all about communicating what we want to do, but we have to be careful to not be critical because what's going to happen? You already know. Your partner's going to be defensive. They're going to shut down. They're going to, blow you off. They're not going to listen. And then you guys get into a fight and now you're fighting about something that happened, 6 months ago and not the situation that you want to be fighting about. And so it just turns into this giant mess. So this isn't about erasing the past. It's about creating space for the present and like going forward. So we've covered name the emotion without judgment. Ask, is this about then or now? Communicate clearly, not critically. And now number 4, we need to set boundaries where they're needed. If certain things keep triggering you, a photo, a conversation topic, a family dynamic, it's okay to ask to set boundaries. That doesn't make you insecure. It makes you aware and proactive. Again, remember, there's this bruise that we're trying to protect. Like if we keep hitting the bruise to see if it still hurts, it still hurts. It still freaking hurts. How many times have you done that? Or like how many times have you had like some sort of wound or something? Or, like you've got a hangnail and you've picked it and now like your finger is like throbbing, but you're like touch it to like Steve, it still hurts. Tell me that I'm not the only one that does that. But like, you've got this bruise. We're trying to heal this bruise. We don't keep touching the bruise. So if there's this family dynamic at play, like around the holidays, and you know that it comes at the holidays, it's okay for you to be like, hey, I'm going to sit this one out. Or, hey, let's drive separately to your parents' house. Let's drive separately to my parents' house. Or let's drive separately wherever. Like, I'm going to stay for a little bit and then I'm going to leave. I'm not going to leave you high and dry. I'm going to go for a little bit. But, like, I need some space. Or this is really hard for me. Again, communicate clearly, not critically. And then we're going to set some boundaries where we need to set them. It's totally normal, totally okay to set some boundaries. I think that makes you a hell of a human. I think it's going to make getting through things that much easier. Like, you gain confidence, you feel empowered. You're like, yes, I can do this. This part sucks. It's weird. It's awkward. It hurts. It's all of the things. But you get through it quicker. But let me tell you a little like sneaky thing about boundaries. If you set boundaries, let's say, you guys are supposed to go to your in-laws' house and like things are contentious at this point, and you decide that you're going to leave early and your partner and stepkids stay. Fine. That's what we've agreed to. That's what we're doing, right? And then let's say you go back to your guys' house, or you go back to your house if you don't live together, and then you're just pissed the whole time and you're pissed at your partner for being there, or, you're wallowing in self-pity. No, my friend. Find something to do. You can be mad, of course, but what we do with that really matters. So if we're just going to sit there and be mad and like drink our feelings or eat our feelings, or, just be pissed at the world about all of the things because of this, no. Hard no. Like, we're not doing that because we're choosing to stay in this relationship. We love our partner. We understand that they've got kids. And remember, we're going to be getting a little comfortable being uncomfortable. We need this bruise to heal. We're going to focus on the good part. Like, we are not at that event. We took time out for ourselves. We can go hang out with our friends. We can go see our own family. We can insert whatever it is that we're going to do. We're going to set some boundaries. We're going to do what we need to do. Remember, we're being aware and proactive. So now let's talk about the part that I don't want to skip. You get to reclaim your space and your story. This is your relationship. This is your season. This is your chapter. This is now your family too. And maybe that means redecorating. Maybe it's planning your own vacations. Maybe it's simply deciding we don't have to do it like they did. I was very big on that. Like, whatever you guys have done, I basically want to do like a 180 from. Like, recently I asked on Instagram and on TikTok, like, are you a complete opposite of your partner's ex? And the overwhelming response was yes. There were several people that had said, looks-wise we're, similar, but personality-wise, morals, ethics, all the things are very different. It's okay for you to do things differently. It's okay for you to have a different way, to redecorate your house differently, to, make your own vacations. Is it going to be awkward, or is it going to be weird at first? Yeah, absolutely. But remember, we're working on building confidence. We're working on letting this bruise heal. So you're not a replacement. You're a renewal. You're not a replacement. You're a renewal. You bring new energy, new life, new love into your partner's world. And that is something to be proud of. You're a new chapter, a new character in the story. Everyone likes new characters, right? For the most part. But like, you've been carrying the weight of someone else's past. This is your permission slip to set that down. It is not yours to carry, honey. Like, it's not your story. You don't have to carry that weight. Stop, please stop. Here's your permission slip to set it down. Here's your permission slip to be in your soft era. Here's your permission slip to not be so bothered by so many things. You're allowed to feel it. You're allowed to feel weird. You're allowed to process it. And you're absolutely allowed to say, that may have been their story, but this is ours. This is our story. We're going to do it differently. And maybe you don't outwardly say it, but maybe that's like your mantra of like, that may have been their story, but this is ours. This is how we're going to do it. And you don't have to be a jerk about it. You don't have to be rude about it. You don't have to, throw it in everyone's face. Like, look, we're doing things different. No, we don't have to do that. You're allowed to feel it. You're allowed to process all of the feelings that you've got, all of the weirdness, all of the everything. But remember, you're absolutely allowed to say, that may have been their story. This is ours. thank you so much for hanging out with me today. If this episode hit home, please share it on social media. Tag me so I can reshare it as well. And as always, leave a review if you love this episode. It helps other stepmoms find the show and feel seen. I will chat with you next week. Thanks for taking time to listen to this week's episode. If anything was helpful or resonated with you, please share it on social media and tag me. I'm just at Alicia Crosco. And if you could leave a 5-star rating and a review while you're at it, that would also be really helpful. And if you find yourself struggling with your stepmom journey and you want a little bit more support without the hefty price tag of coaching, you might want to check out the Stepmom Side community, which is my own private community for stepmoms, where you get to connect with other stepmoms around the world and myself, where I hold weekly office hours and monthly group coaching. It's kind of like you have your own personal coach in your own back pocket. Again, without that hefty price tag. See you next week.